Well, welcome, everyone. I'm Professor David Loertscher from the School of Information at San Jose State University in California. And it is my privilege to introduce to you John Szabo. And I think you're going to really enjoy his perspective. We, of course, in this series, we concentrate on school libraries. But it's wonderful to reach out to others who have an interest in children and young people. And so it is my privilege. John, would you introduce yourself and your early life and your and why you have developed the empathy you have for children and young people?
Well, thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be with you. Yes, I am currently the city librarian of Los Angeles, head of the Los Angeles Public Library, and I've spent really my entire career in public libraries, and as such, though, of course, have interacted with and had partnerships with many different types of libraries and institutions and social service organizations. And public libraries have this incredibly and wonderfully broad mission of serving everyone in the community. And so we're interested in serving the youngest in our community, and so many public libraries have programs for infants even, and certainly all the way through seniors. I have only had one job that was not in a library in my life, and it was a part-time job when I was an undergraduate as a announcer and on-air person for a public radio station. And so that was fun. But I always knew my passion was in libraries. And as I was an undergraduate, and even back into my high school days as a young person working part-time jobs in libraries, I didn't quite know until I was entering the latter years of my undergraduate studies that I would be a librarian and go on to graduate school. But I always seemed to be pointing in that direction. And my goal going into library school was actually to be a interlibrary loan librarian in a small academic library. I loved interlibrary loan. I had a little part-time job doing that at the university, and then things changed, and I wound up going to public libraries, and the rest is history. But I always had a fascination with the library and the incredibly important service that it provided. And I grew up as a only child in a single parent household. My mother passed away when I was 10 years old, and also my father was from an immigrant family, and I think and a Hungarian, a son of Hungarian immigrants, and Cleveland, Ohio is where he grew up, and my mother was from Montgomery, Alabama, and so we moved back to Montgomery. She passed away, and here I was raised in Montgomery, Alabama, with a very unusual last name, and I think that gave me an appreciation broadly for people different than myself, and I think that shaped how I thought about the world, how I thought about life. I think it made me more curious, perhaps more empathetic, and I think I give my dad a lot of credit for the kinds of conversations we had and how he raised me in terms of thinking about the world as a bigger place, and that people are from everywhere and have different stories to tell and different backgrounds, and I certainly treasure that as a librarian today.
That's really super. And so your experience in libraries has kind of been coast to coast. Tell us a bit quickly about that.
It has, and I grew up in the South and wound up going to a graduate school in library information studies at the University of Michigan, and spent 2 years there. And I have to mention the program because it was so transformative for me, and really I think is what ultimately steered me into public libraries. They had an incredible program there where all of their residence halls had libraries in them, small libraries that very much looked like public libraries. They very much had the spirit and the kinds of collections and programs that you would expect in a public library. They were typically one room, and they would hire a graduate student in library information studies to manage them. And you lived in the residence hall, you were on residence hall staff, you were not an employee of university libraries, you were an employee of the Department of Residential Life. And I applied for that and got that fellowship. And so I was a head librarian in a residence hall, and that was very much like being a library director, a public library director in a very tiny little pond, And on a lark, I applied for a job as a town librarian in a tiny community in Southern Illinois. And to the credit of that library board, they took a chance on me and hired me to be their library director. And I absolutely loved it. Fell in love with being the library guy in this small town. People would ask me about the library when I'd go grocery shopping. you know, it was really an incredible experience. I never lived in a small place like that before, but it really gave me an appreciation for a small town and the importance of a public library in a small town like that, and how it opened the windows to the world for residents in a community like that. And I learned a lot. And so spent 3.5 years there in Southern Illinois. And then I was in Florida for 10 years, directing 2 public libraries, including Clearwater, which had 4 branches and a big central library. And, we had a branch library out on the beach where sand in the carpet was one of the biggest issues we had. We built a couple of libraries while I was there, and absolutely loved it. And then took a big jump to Atlanta and became director of the public library system, serving not only the city of Atlanta, but 14 other municipalities around Atlanta and the county of Fulton. And was there for 7 years, loved it, loved urban librarianship, loved serving a big city, loved all the big challenging issues that a big urban library system had, and also really loved thinking about what equitable library service means and making certain that we were serving everyone very differently from neighborhood to neighborhood and community to community, but doing it in an equitable way, and learning about advocacy and all, and really was not looking to leave, but the job in LA came open, and it seemed like a really good match for the work that I had done and the passions that I had for library service. We had done a lot of work around social services and intersections of public health and libraries, and came to LA, and it proved to be a great match. And I've never held a job this long. I've been here almost 14 years now, and absolutely love the City of Angels. And it's an incredible library system with wonderful employees, and we're really proud of all of our services, and certainly proud of our services for young people.
And tell us, Library Journal likes you. Tell us about that.
Well, that was an incredible honor, and I was so pleased last year to be the Librarian of the Year. And it's really a recognition, not just for me, but for all of the great work that our staff do. They are incredibly creative and innovative, and the article painted that Library Journal ran, painted a really beautiful picture of the work of our libraries, which is also so many of the things we're doing, are things that are done by libraries across the country. And at the end of the day, it's about impact. It's about, the good people of LA are spending a lot of money on their public libraries. And I think every day about what it is we are doing with those dollars, what it is we're doing with this basket of resources that we have, starting with incredibly smart and talented and hardworking staff, incredible buildings, collections, being the caretakers of the history of Los Angeles, being such an important institution. This Los Angeles Public Library has been around for 154 years. We celebrated a few years ago our 150th. And, LA is such a city of new things and a city of reinvention and discovering yourself and reimagining things. And for some institution to be around for over 150 years is really remarkable and very special. And this year we're celebrating the centennial of our central library. And many libraries around the country have had a central library for much longer, but in LA, we really largely grew in the last century, and to be celebrating those kinds of milestones is a testament to the importance of the library as an institution. And also, I think, the ability of the library to evolve and to grow and to adapt. And I don't think libraries and librarians get enough credit for, not fighting change, not fighting technology and its evolution, but really embracing it and finding great ways to be able to use it. And I'm really proud of that as a librarian, and I think we all should be.
Well, thank you. And so let's zero in on what services you offer to children and young teenagers.
Well, I think, the library is a pivotal institution for young people. And I think that I tell people if our budget went down to a teensy tiny amount of money, if it went down to, 0.01% of what we have today, there would be books and there would be a librarian for children. It's so core to who we are and what we do. And when people think about the impact of the public library, their mind, I think, should go to the work that we do to cultivate a young person's love of reading, of curiosity, of play, and of that idea of opening windows to the world. And I tell people that as innovative and creative and wonderful and forward thinking as our institution is, and with all the things that we do and embrace and the new services and the things we talk so much about, all of those sort of wonderful traditional services that create the warm fuzzies in people when they think about their public library, we do them all, and we do them really, really well, from story times to physical collections, um, summer programming, summer reading, all of those things. But we also play an important role with digital collections, with digital literacy, digital equity, making certain that children that may not have the technology that they need through their schools or at home, that they have, and it's available through the library. That we're being very intentional early on to establish a relationship with young people before school, and even before mom, dad, or caregiver or grandparent brings the child in. And that's through programs like Read Baby Read, which is a program that endeavors to provide a child's first book to them, and also the importance of reading to infants, to parents and caregivers, making certain that we're active in doing that, and also that we work very closely with schools and school librarians and school administrators, and having that relationship. And I think you've seen public libraries in the last 15 years, certainly, but definitely in the last 5 to 10, really develop meaningful, deep relationships with their schools. It's so important. It's not enough to just assume or to think that schools are going to spend the time and energy that we would want them to directing their young people to the library, promoting the library, and finding ways of partnership, because schools have they're juggling so many issues and things that anything that we can do to be more helpful to align our programming with student achievement goals and things like that, the better. And one of the manifestations of that good relationship between school districts and public libraries, I think, over the years are these agreements to ensure that every child automatically has library privileges, and that we don't simply wait for a mom or dad, many of whom are working multiple jobs, and many of whom may not come from a background of free public library service, and so they may not know that it's free, or they may not know that in our case there are no fines and things like that. So that we've done everything we can to eliminate the barriers. But why wait for them to walk through our doors? Why not make certain that they have that card? And so we call it a student success card. We did it a number of years ago, well before the pandemic. And when the pandemic came along and children were at home and engaged in online learning and all, to be able to have that access was enormously important. We didn't have to think, oh my goodness, how do we make sure that they have that access if they don't have a library card? So that was huge. Not easy, but very, 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 very important. And I think that also lays the foundation for communications with the school district. And I think there's still more that we can do to this day to make certain that we're using that communications channel and that point of entree with principals and area superintendents and teachers and school librarians to say, we're here for you and we have all these resources and they support you. Another thing that we do with the Los Angeles Unified School District is we invite the school librarians and the youth serving librarians to the library at the beginning of the school year. And we essentially tell them we love you, however we can support you. We're here for you. And we talk about all the things that the library does and some of the newer things that we may offer that they may not be aware of. So, and they love that. And it's regardless of what's said or what's done or what's given, simply the gesture helps to lay the foundation for a really great relationship. So I think that's really, really important. And then we have, maker spaces, the Octavia Lab here at Central Library with podcasting studios and 3D printing and all of those things that happen in library maker spaces and digital learning environments. And that supports learning as well, because so many people don't have access to that in their school environment.
So with all those services, why would an administrator in the school want to hire a librarian when they might say, well, they're already getting it at the public library, so why should we have a school librarian? And you reply,
well, because it's absolutely, I think essential to support the educational mission of the school. And without that school library and that school librarian, there is not that immediate presence, that support for teachers, and the opportunity for teachers to bring classes to school libraries to talk about how to find material, how to research topics, be it online or with physical collections. It's also, frankly, the ambassador of reading for pleasure, making certain that that's something that's happening, and owning that mission within the public school environment. And it pains me to see how there are schools that don't value that to the degree that they should. School librarians are incredible partners to the public library, and to promote those services. And I have family members who are teachers and who find their school libraries absolutely essential, and find having a collection of books for reading for pleasure within their own classrooms enormously important, and seeking the assistance and advice and wisdom from school librarians on building those collections within the classroom, so you create a culture of reading and learning.
so that is absolutely super. What is your bottom line about this whole effort to maintain librarians in a very divided culture, and in the whole emergence of artificial intelligence and all of these things that are happening? What's your bottom line of the profession and service?
Well, I will say one thing to start out, and I think it's relevant also to your last question in the last conversation we had about school libraries, and that is that I so believe that librarians, be they frontline librarians or mid-level management, senior management, but librarians, school librarians, public libraries, are outstanding stewards of resources. They are outstanding stewards of public resources and private resources, private dollars, donated resources. And you give a school librarian or a children's librarian $100, and they will make a difference. They will have impact. They will change a life. And I think more than so many other areas of local government, of stewards of public dollars, I really believe that in terms of what we deliver for the dollars is absolutely incredible. So I think that's really important. On relevance and AI and the changing environment that we're in and technology, I am incredibly optimistic about the role of libraries going forward. I believe libraries are more relevant than ever. I believe they're more important than ever. I believe they serve as a place where people from different backgrounds come together. I think that's true in the school environment, certainly, but I think it's also certainly true in the public library environment. And I think it's true in an academic library on campus. It's the one place where, within an information commons, all of the active learning spaces that are now in college and university libraries, they're places where people come together. And I think people are hungry for that. I think they're hungry for that in an age of rapidly evolving technology, coming through the pandemic. I think that showed us that. And so I think that's incredibly important. And also, I think part of the magic sauce of public libraries is that we are constantly and relentlessly thinking about how we can make a difference, how we can have impact, and how we can tie what it is we do to some of the biggest issues that our communities face. In LA, that means we're a city of immigrants. We're a community of immigrants. What's the library doing to provide service there? And so we have a New Americans initiative where that helps us when we're thinking about school children and making certain that immigrant families are bringing kids to the library as well, and that they know about the tradition of free public library service. But we provide assistance on helping people take that first step on the path to citizenship with immigration issues. And it's valuable because the library is doing something that is very important to the community at large, but it's also strategically important and valuable for the library, because what are we doing? We're establishing a relationship. We're showing that we are a trusted institution. And when those folks are not just brand new to LA, but have been here for 10 years and 20 years, and they have families and they have grandchildren, and they're going to be library people, and they are going to one day perhaps be voting, and they may vote for a ballot measure that supports the library. They may go to a budget hearing and support the library. And even if none of those things happen, we want them to be users because they're residents of our community. We want everyone in the community to use the library and to find services. So that, and also the library is constantly thinking about what the barriers are to providing equitable service. And that one of the areas that I always use as an example to that is teens. There's a certain cultural competence required of librarians to provide great library service to teens. And our teen YA librarians are magic at that. They have that skill set, that ability, and that is enormously important. And so making certain that we are not losing that audience as they transition from childhood into adulthood is absolutely critical. So thinking about, is it a language barrier? We have a growing Armenian community in the Sunlit Tahunga area. That means we need to think about language access, and also from a public relations and marketing and communication standpoint, making certain that we're mindful of that as well. So the fact that we're thinking about all of these things and acting on it means that we are an incredibly nimble institution. And that's not just the LA public libraries of the world. I see that happening in rural libraries as well. I remember when I was in Georgia that we had a number of public libraries serving largely rural communities. And let me tell you, they knew about their immigrant communities and were endeavoring to find ways to serve them, and sometimes in challenging political environments as well.
Well, John Szabo, you are an absolutely incredible leader in our profession.
You're very kind. Thank you.
I want to pay you my respects for the things you do to support young people, because you're right, they are the key to keeping our civilization going and our whole idea of democracy and all of those things. So thank you for your time, and we appreciate every moment that we've spent with you. And so we'll say thank you and goodbye.
Well, thank you so much. It's been my pleasure, and hopefully everyone can tell I really love this profession and love this work, and it was a joy to chat with you about it. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.